Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, YouTubers. This is Redwood, checking back in with part 2 of this conversion video of the ready-made RC chuck glider. And as you can see, I've got some work done. All right, so first up, I put a little battery tray inside. All right. I've already glued a motor on, and at some point I'm going to insert a video or a picture of what I used. I basically used a round servo head that was small enough that the motor fit on it, and then I just basically took my hobby knife with a new blade on it and cut around the circular servo head, and then plucked the foam out, mounted it. I had to drill some holes in it to be able to accept the motor, but I used the old quad small whoop frame that I had laying around that had the same bolt hole pattern. So I used that to make the holes on the servo head, and it worked. So, and I used hot glue to put it in. So that motor is in there. It's glued in already. All right. It's an Emax. I believe it's like 1104. The KV is very high, but again, I'm only running this on 2S. So that's not going to matter that the KV is so high because I'm only running it on 2S. All right. So you can barely see the ESC, but that's the plug. I always put plugs on both ends just in case I want to upgrade the ESC or the motor. So I can just pull it out. You see it coming through my little foam firewall there. And from where that foam is to where the motor is sitting at, it's a nice big chunk. So it's a decent firewall. It'll give it some cushion just in case you nose in. Hopefully you don't nose in. Hopefully I don't nose in. But it'll give it some cushion and shouldn't break free all that easy. It's a small motor, as you can see. It's not really that big. It's a little guy. Can you see the number on it? 11.0. It's 1106. There we go. It's 1106. KV's high. I think it was like 9300 or something like that. But again, I'm using a 2S battery, so it's not going to matter. All right. I need to make up some connectors again for these two servos. I got one servo inside, which is no big deal. I can easily fish it back out, put the end on it, and fish it back inside the body. I did cut the rudder. As you can see, I cut the rudder free, and I cut one side of the elevator free. I'm going to use a joiner in between to join both halves on both sides, because I'm definitely not going to run two servos to run each half. So you got your rudder, you got your elevator, and you got your aileron. Now, I didn't cut them all the way free. I cut it at the top. As you can see, I cut that right at the top. But I'm going to cut it free. I'm going to bevel. And then I'm going to use some glue, some foam tack, some Arlene's, something. But I know everybody should know all about the glue hinges. And if you don't, I'll show you in a later video that I'm considering making. And that's both sides. You know, you're not going to see it go up because it's cut at the top. So it's only going to go down. So once I cut that free and bevel it, it'll go up and down. Once I hinge it back on, it'll go up and down. As you can see, I got a lot of weight to one side of this thing. All right, so here's something else that I did. there's my aileron servo. So I didn't have a 2 grammer laying around. Well, I did, but the 2 grammers was too small. So I had a 5 gram servo laying around. So I plopped it in there. All right. And that's going to drive each aileron. I'm just going to run a cable out or a push rod from here, there. As you can see, I notched the fuse on the side. It's all notched up. So the servo sits down in the wing inside there, and the push rods will exit these little holes, and everything should work properly. But like I said, I've glued in some plywood, some scrap plywood that I had laying around. I glued it in just to stiffen up certain areas. So once the wing is inside the wing saddle and it's all bolted together, however I'm gonna do that, it should stiffen up this center section enough. The back doesn't really need it because it doesn't flex that much. The back doesn't really need it. Neither does the front since I put that plate in there. But that's basically what's going to happen, you know. And I got to work on that, fixing that, getting that joiner in the middle so both halves go up and down. All right, I carved out a little bit of the canopy here. The canopy. I'm not sure if I'm going to do FPV or not. That's what the other plug is on the ESC. One's for the battery. One's for the if I choose to go that route. But that's why I hogged that out, because now I can get a little 200 milliwatt VTX in there, a little small one, and mount a run cam racer on the outside right up here and power them both. So, you know, I can FPV this. You can FPV it if you want. I mean, if you consider doing this conversion, you can FPV. You can do whatever you want, pretty much. I don't think it's big enough to stuff a flight controller in there. I could be wrong. I don't know. Maybe you can. Maybe you can't. I don't know. But it's moving along. It's moving right along. I'm moving right along. Solving problems as I go. I haven't run into any hiccups per se, but it's moving right along. You know, I can't complain. It's looking pretty sweet. Like I said, I did get that other servo plug down inside. You probably can't see it. There it is. See it at the bottom of that servo plug. You know, I inadvertently glued this in. I don't know why I did that. But like I said, I didn't seal the cut up. So all I got to do is fish that back out, put the connector on it, and then fish it back inside the body. And it'll be golden. I did hot wire inside the fuse a little bit. Okay, so it goes back. I dug out a little channel. Probably goes back about this far. Right? So the idea is to kind of slide the receiver. Once I get everything connected, kind of slide the receiver back inside the fuse a little bit, and depending on how many antennas it has, I'll probably flip it around and and push it back and have the antennas come out back here. Make all of the connections up here. So that means I'll definitely have to extend the servo cable that's inside there, and extend that one if I'm gonna plug everything in this way. You know, the ESC servo lead is a little long, but I'm gonna leave it. I'm not gonna cut it up. I'm gonna leave it. I actually hot wired the channel out in there. You can't see it because I can't get a good shot up in there. I actually hot wired that open a little bit more, a little bit better. So some air could pass through it, I guess. See? You can see the wire on the back end there. Pretty sweet. I like the floor in it, you know. Um, that's why I really don't throw away uh, wood from kits and stuff that I don't use. Maybe there's some extra parts. I don't throw that stuff away because it becomes handy at some point when you're doing something like this. Because that's what these little wood parts are. All these little wood parts came from the Reptile Dragon 2 that I'm currently building. And I got one video all made up for it I got to post. But yeah, I that's some wood that was inside, and I basically used it in this plane. You know, so hopefully this thing is going to come in light because it's still pretty light. Even with the 5 gram servo, it's still pretty light. And if you notice where the servo is, it's well behind my CG. My CG is like right in here. So when I CG it, CG is right in there at the tail end of that servo. So I'm still good CG wise, which might make a problem for me when I go and put the battery in. That might become an issue since it's already at CG and there's no battery in it. It's balancing where it's supposed to with just the motor, the ESC, the little bit of plywood I put in, and the 3 servos that are in here. So it's balancing pretty good. But I think all of that will change once I run my push rods. Once I put the push rods in the back, that's going to add weight to the back. Once I glue the horizontal stab in, that's going to add weight to the back. You know, so I'm not too worried about hitting CG. You know, once I put some glue back here and close all of these cuts up that I made, I still got to put in a little sleeve in there because my plan for the wing is to glue a dowel into the back of that, right in the center. Try to find the center of this little radius piece here, and I'm gonna glue a dowel in. So now when I go to put the wing on, I'll just scoop the dowel in and lock it from the front with a bolt and the standoff on the inside. That's if I can get it, because that servo went in pretty deep. It was kind of tall, and I think, yep, there it is right there. You can see it shining a little bit. So I may have to rethink that and use this hole up above it, because I think it's still free, and it's still free in the foam there. So yeah, I mean, I'm not dead in the water, but I got to be careful right now at this point, just for CG reasons, because you don't want it too nose heavy, and you definitely don't want it tail heavy, because it's not going to fly right if it's tail heavy. And that's the whole basis of me taking my time with this. I thought it through. I didn't put those 1.5 gram servos in the back for nothing. I thought it through. You got to when you're doing this, when you're in this hobby, whether you're scratch building something or whether you're just converting a chuck glider like this, you have to think about the center of gravity. That's key. Center of gravity is always key. Well, like I said, once I get the push rods in, which are going to be metal, that's going to add weight to the back. Once I hook the push rods and everything up, because it's going back past the CG, weight. Add a little weight back here with some glue. With the glue, it'll all add weight. If I really wanted to add a lot of weight, all I got to do is whip up some 5-minute epoxy and glue that in. And once that 5-minute epoxy dries, that'll add at least 1 gram of weight to the tail. So there are many ways that you can overcome certain obstacles when you're scratch building, when you're converting. There are hundreds of different things you can do. I don't like to add lead weights, but plenty of people do it. Me myself, I'm not into that, so I won't do it. I try not to. I don't want to say I won't, because I've done it to one plane, one wing. I had to. It just would not hit CG, so I had to add some weight to it in the front, some lead weights, and I had to use about 9 grams, 10 grams. Oh, look at that! Nice little shot of the servo. See it up in there? The servo head that I used as a motor mount. Bingo! Like I said, everything works. You don't have to. You don't have to try to problem solve if you don't have certain things laying around. Use what you got. Those little servo heads come in just about any package of servos you buy, except for the linear servos. Any rotary servo, whether it's a 5 gram, 2 gram, 9 gram, they all come with the round servo head. That's for differential. When you got to do a differential setup, you use the round servo head for differential. What else? There's really not too much more. I mean, at this point, like I said, all I got to figure out is the joiner here in the back to get both elevator halves working together. That way I can run it off of the one servo. Get my extensions done for the servos, for these 2 servo plugs. Get my little extensions done. And I'm only going to make them about 5 or 6 inches. So that way they connect, they go in, boom, done. So 5, 6 inches on that, and I'll be good. But hopefully you guys are enjoying this. Like I said, I wasn't able to save. I don't know if I told you guys, but in the last video I said I wanted to save the little plug because it was good for holding the canopy on, but there was no way that I could use that and still get the battery and stuff in there, get the battery out, get the battery in, get the battery out, get the battery in. So I had to cut it out. And it was easy enough. Basically, sharp hobby knife, cut along where you want to, what you want to use. And just remember to keep it straight up and straight down as you're making the cut. And then once you get into a certain depth that the hobby knife can't go any further, you whip out that retractable blade box cutter, and you go in a little deeper, and you go in a little deeper. You don't want to cut all the way through the body, but you want to go in enough where you can get a good pocket like this one was. That's a good pocket right there. Okay? And that's all you got to do. Like I said, that goes all the way through. See? Goes all the way through. It's pretty nifty. The speed controller is a Hobby King, a little Hobby King 6 amp, because I think that's all I'm going to need. Because I'm just going to run a single blade or bi blade prop. Not a 3-blade, bi-blade, single blade prop. I think I'm going to run a little 4-incher on here. So that's not going to produce too many amps, too much amp draw. Another thing I forgot to think about, because I'm using 3 servos, I may have to introduce a BEC, because the BEC that's on the speed controller is only a I think it's only a 1 amp or 2 amp BEC. And I don't think that's going to drive all 3 servos. So I may have to run a separate um, 5 volt 3 amp BEC, little small one. You know, everybody makes them. Flywoo, iFlight. You can find them just about anywhere. But if you're running more than 2 servos, you always. So what I basically, my rule of thumb is this: if I have more than, excuse me, if I have more than 2 servos in any given plane, I say like with this setup, I got 3 servos. So I'm going to use, like I said, I'm going to use a 5 volt 3 amp because 1 amp per servo. I'm figuring 1 amp per servo. Now these probably ain't gonna draw a full amp while they're working, but just to be on the safe side, 1, 2, and then the servo in there at 3 amps. So I'm gonna use a 5 volt 3 amp BEC, which I'm going to connect to the speed controller. And lucky me, like I said, I do it to just about everything. As you can see, it has a connector on it. So all I got to do is just disconnect, and I can run the BEC. I can cut the heat shrink off and run the BEC off of that, or use the plug. Just bypass. Say, hey, you know what? I'm not going to do FPV, and bypass it. But even if I do FPV, you can run the FPV, especially if you're using a all-in-one camera with the antenna on top. You can run that off of the battery, off the balance lead, off of the battery. Just make a little plug for it. You're only running 7.2 volts, 7.4, 7.2, and most cameras nowadays, unless they specify 5 volts, they should work a little bit higher than that. But even if it specifies 5 volts, you use a little BEC like I'm using back. Bingo. Because I'm adding in the BEC, I'm not going to use the BEC on the speed controller. So I'll use the BEC on the speed controller to power the FPV feed if I decide to do FPV. If I decide to put a little camera system on here, VTX and camera, I'll use the 5 volts from the BEC on the ESC to power the camera. And then I'll use this because it's direct current to power the 5 volt 3 amp BEC, which is going to power the receiver, which is going to power the servos. Boom. Easy peasy Japanesey. You know, take the plug out of there, out of the servo, take the red one out, because that's your BEC. Take that out. Done. Run it back in, make a few connections here and there, and I'll be able to do FPV. All right, but just a little update, part 2. All right, so when I do part 3, what I'm going to do is, for part 3, I'm going to finalize and fly. So what you're going to see in the last video, which will be part 3 of this, you'll see me connecting the push rods, gluing this in, making the connections there, finishing up, gluing this together, back together, and then putting my sleeve inside for the dowel that's going to hold it in the back, and then finish up the front. All right, and then I'll pause the video or stop the video, and then get it out to the local park that's a few blocks away from my house, and we'll do a maiden on this little guy. All right, so I also got to dig my little scale out too. I got to dig my scale out because I want to see exactly how much it weighs without a battery, Now that I hogged some foam out, but like I said, I took foam out, I put foam back in, I took the ball bearings out. So I'm figuring between the motor, the ESC, and the 5 gram servo, which is in front of the CG, is doing the job of the two ball bearings. So 5 grams, I'm figuring this ESC with all of the wires on it was probably 6 grams, 7 grams. So you're looking at 12 grams. The motor with leads on it, I'm figuring it was probably 15 grams, maybe more. So whatever the weight of those two ball bearings were, I've already put that back in because, like I said, it's hitting CG perfectly. All right. So that's all I got right now. I'm not going to prolong this on any longer. Um, it's been fun. It's always fun converting these things. Always fun, right? So you don't need, like I said, you don't need a big honking motor because it's a glider. So you're not gonna be ripping up burning up the sky, going fast, flat out. Maybe some rolls, some loops while you flying around at or below half throttle. Just having fun. This is what it is. It's not a speed demon. It's a little guy. All right, it's not a ripper. It's a little guy. It's to have fun with. All right, give you guys one more look. Like I said, oh, you know what? Let me put the wing on so you can actually see that it's got clearance and all of that. All right, so the wing's on. The main wing is on, and as you can see, I got plenty of clearance. I got plenty of clearance to get the push rod to come out, make the connection to move forward and backwards freely. I didn't really know of any other way. I mean, I could have pushed it through the top, but like I was trying to make the connection here to keep the canopy down. I said canopy to have some to keep the wing saddle down. Sorry guys, to keep this wing saddle in place. But this way is much better because it'll still give it a cleaner look, even though those push rods would be coming out of there. And I didn't want to weigh it down with using two servos. I mean, I used a 5 gram servo. I could have used a 2 grammer and a 2 grammer, and what still came in under a gram. Big deal. I had the 5 gram laying around. Um, I think I got some plastic gear. Anyway, big deal. 5 grams, big deal. Look at her. She looks great, doesn't she? She looks great already. Look at her. Got the down thrust in the motor. That's a beautiful thing. So now, when it's spinning, all of the air will blow up over the main wing, and it'll make the ailerons more effective. Oh, let me show you that. I actually went out past the line. See, there's the line, the molded in line. I actually went out past the line a little bit and made a cut just to make the ailerons almost full span. All right. You guys are gonna be impressed when this thing flies. You really are. You really are. You're gonna be impressed the way it flies, and you're also gonna be impressed with how much time you get off of a 2 cell. And I'm not gonna put anything more in it than probably a 2S500. That's it. 2S500, and I guarantee this thing will fly 15 minutes because I'm not gonna be on it the whole time. I'm gonna glide it around as best I can and have fun with it. Get some flight time out of the little 500 milliamp battery. All right. Hope you guys enjoyed. Stay tuned for the next video, which should be along in a couple of days. All right. Later, guys.